They didn't know what preschool was when I went to school, or kindergarten, or anything else.
Was it just first grade?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started school when I was 6 years old, and went to Franklin.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Franklin
School.
here in Owensboro? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Where
I've
was
lived here
that
all my life.
Oh, okay. Where was the Franklin school at?
On 7th Street, right off of Triplet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. East.
It's on-
East, north.
Is it there still?
Well, I hadn't been there for years. That's where all the, now all the 7th Street and that area back through there, what is it, the homes for the handicapped?
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I can't think of it either. Wyndham Foster Center.
Okay. That's where your house was?
No,
No.
mine, I lived, when I started school, I lived on Hathaway Street, 15th and Hathaway.
So what did your parents do?
Well, my mother never did do anything except housework, and didn't do a lot of that because she had arthritis so bad
Oh,
that she couldn't work a whole lot.
okay.
My dad, of course, I was raised during the Depression,
What year were you born?
1924,
Yeah, the Depression came not that long after that, right?
1930, 29, 30. Got it started in 29, went to about 32, 33, something like that. And my dad took care of us by selling newspapers. There was a paper in Louisville called the Herald Post, and he sold papers, but he couldn't make a living at that. So he got a job at Murphy Chair Company. He worked 12-hour days, 6 days a week, and walked from Hathaway Street to Murphy Chair Company on Wing Avenue and the railroad.
That's quite a ways to walk.
Yeah, 3 miles.
Yeah.
And then he come home and worked in the garden till it was too dark to work. We had a garden every year, and that's why I've never had a garden. I spent my summers in the garden, and my summers in the garden was my eating in the winter.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Hadn't been for the garden, we wouldn't have had food in the winter, and we didn't have all we needed then. But my mother, we ate out of the garden, and my mother canned everything that was left.
What would you all do for meat?
Now that we bought at the grocery. We had meat one day a week.
1 day a week.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What, would your mother buy pork or chicken or?
Steak, beef.
Oh.
Well, sometimes we had pork chops
Mm-hmm.
instead of beef.
That sounds pretty good.
It is good. Pork's better than beef. At least to me it is, and I can't eat it.
Oh, it doesn't agree with you?
I haven't been able to eat pork since 1950.
Oh. That's a long time to go without pork.
Yeah,
Oh my.
but I don't miss it.
So you grew up going to Franklin School. Where did you go for high school?
I graduated from Franklin. I went 6 years there and graduated from Franklin and went to Central Junior High.
Oh. Then did you go to senior high?
I went 3 years at Central Junior High. We was the first class that stayed 3 years at junior high, and then went 3 years at senior high. That was in 1937. I went to junior high. In 1940, I went to senior high. I started in senior high the day my sister got out.
Really? So what did she do when she got out? Did she get married?
She went to, there was a school here, a business school, Owensboro Business School, and she went there and took bookkeeping and typing and all that, whatever that entails, and was a secretary all her life. She was secretary at Murphy Chair Company for a while, and then she worked at GE, Kenred rather, for a while. That's where she met her husband. And then she left there and went to Colonial Bakery.
Oh my
And
God.
was the secretary for Colonial Bakery for 25 years.
Is that where she retired from?
And he retired from GE.
So what about you? Did you, were you still at senior high when Pearl Harbor happened? How did you hear about it?
I was carrying papers. I was a newspaper carrier. And I got it firsthand because when the papers came out, it was headlines.
What did you think about it?
Really, I didn't think much about it. I didn't really know what was going on. Nobody knew what was going on. It was just everybody was in a commotion. Didn't know what to do. And of course, I was 16, 17 years old when it happened. And I just kept on going to school. I was in ROTC. And
Were your friends joining the war effort?
were what?
Were your friends going off to war, and did that make you think about it?
Ones that was older than me that got out of school. One of my friends got killed in Saint Mary Église, France, along with hundreds of others. He wrote a letter back to one of the boys in the class. Of course, the whole class read it. He said, "These people over here are crazy. They're trying to kill us." And they did. And of course, I knew his whole family. And he was the only boy. He was the youngest and the only boy in the family.
It's awful.
And then his dad was a foreman over the carpenter shop at GE when I worked down there.
Oh, they probably took it really hard. It's awful.
Yeah. It's awful. No matter who it is. You know, I think of the ones that I left over there, and then I think of the Iraq War, and I think really the ones I left over there are better off than the ones that came back from the Iraq War with no arms and no legs, blind, the government not taking care of them. they let them go off like that, and then when they got home, now during World War II, when you went into the Army in World War II, or service, wherever it was, and you had a job, when you came home, they had to hire you back. Mm-hmm. And if you wanted it. And I took my job back and worked almost 2 years and quit and started school.
Now, when you went into the service, were you drafted? Or did you sign up?
I was drafted because the lady that was the head of the draft board was on my paper route. I delivered her paper, and I knew her.
Uh-oh.
And I was working for Westinghouse at the time, and they wanted to give me a deferment, and I told them I didn't want a deferment, and they said, well, we want you to stay. We need you. And I said, the Army needs me too. And I called her up and asked her if she would send my notice out the next time. She sent notices out.
And did she?
Mm-hmm.
So where did you go for training?
Well, I went to Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I stayed there from 1943 until 1944.
So what did you learn in basic training?
Oh. They taught us how to survive under whatever conditions we were under. And nobody knows. I can't tell you what kind of conditions we were under. They're indescribable. You know, you were out all the time. We, in training, we would go out for field problems and walk right by the barracks and go out in the woods and pitch our pup tents and stay out there.
But you all had a good time.
In combat, you didn't have barracks to go in, so they got us used to it. I remember up in Indiana, I was at Camp Atterbury. That's where we left to go overseas, and we went out and was out on a problem for 3 days, and came right back by and marched right by our barracks out into the woods and pitched our tents, and there we stayed till the next day. We tore our tents down and put them on our back, went out another 3 days and came back and did the same thing again.
Y'all are just having camping.
Yeah. But they was getting us used to being out all the time. Mm-hmm. And it didn't make any difference. I woke up one morning with water about 6 inches deep flowing all around me, going right through my pup tent. And water woke me up.
I guess you had pitched your tent by a stream or something, or?
We was camped in a dry creek bed, and it rained that night, and it flooded. I mean, it rained, flooded, and that dry creek bed wasn't dry anymore.
No. I wouldn't want to wake up all wet, would you?
Well, in combat, you wake up to that almost every day. When we got to Europe, it rained all across France.
Is that where you said you left Camp Atterbury? Mm-hmm. And what was your trip like overseas?
Oh, we went from Camp Atterbury to New York,
Oh, okay.
and went overseas on the Queen Elizabeth.
What was that like?
Oh, they had 23,000 troops and all their equipment jam packed into that ship.
I bet you couldn't move.
We took turns about sleeping in the hanging bunks that they have, and sleeping on the deck. One night you slept in the bunk, the next night you slept on the deck. And Queen Elizabeth was so big, there's no place for them to harbor in England or any place else over there. So we dropped anchor in Firth of Clyde in Scotland and went off the ship in ferry boats to a train and went to, I can't remember, I have no idea what the name of that town was in England. And I know we rode the train all night, but
So did the train go to France?
no, the train went down to southern England. No, we went to France on a ship. Everybody got sick. The English Channel is given up to be the roughest strip of water in the world. So they told us.
Was it?
We was in the hold of that ship, and but the steel hull between us and the water, and it's just like somebody outside beating on it with a hammer all the time. We couldn't even stand up for the vomit.
Oh. Sounds awful.
Everything about war is awful. Everything. But we trained, excuse me, I have a voice problem. We trained for a year and a half as a division. They took us in, formed a 106th Infantry Division, and it was made up of young men, 18, and none older than 22, but mostly 18 and 19. And they trained us. The training they gave us, they give us 3 different kinds of training to see how much more 18 and 19, 20, 21, 22-year-old young men could stand that 35, 40-year-olds couldn't. So there was no limit to how much we had to go through. We trained for 9 weeks, regular basic training. I went in, I weighed 130 pounds. And in 6 months, or 6 weeks probably, I weighed 156. And I still wore the same clothes. Muscle. Everywhere we went, we ran. And we carried full fuel packs. After we got strong enough to do it, of course, we had to work up to that. But after we worked up to that, that's the way it was. we started out taking 5-mile hikes, and then we went to 10 miles, and then we went to 15, and then we went to 25 miles in 8 hours. 25 miles in the heat in South Carolina in 8 hours.
That makes me sick.
It made a lot of them sick. Mm-hmm. We had a first sergeant in our company. He was a regular Army. He was there with the what they call it, cadre, C-A-D-R-E, cadre, the trainers that trained us from the 80th Division. And he was 39 years old. And on this 25-mile hike, they didn't want anybody to fall out. If you fell out, you just laid there. Nobody did anything. Nobody touched you. They just let you lay there. And to keep people from our company from falling out, because they graded the companies by how many made the hike and how many fell out. He walked into the company street carrying 3 full-bill packs. And the man that he had the packs came in standing up, 39 years old. That's something.
That's incredible. It's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
And not fall out.
Yeah. But he was regular Army. And he let everybody know it too.
Proud.
And nobody bothered him. But you know, during our training, we had a lieutenant in our platoon that went through actual combat conditions, and when we
May I have your attention, please? The Charles Shoemaker is in the building. Please call the first floor information desk. Charles Shoemaker. Thank you.
When we opened the door to the barracks, we didn't know who was going in or whether the door was going to blow off in their face. He booby-trapped the whole barrack compound. Everything in it. We didn't know what was going to happen when we picked something up. You know, it wasn't enough to hurt you, but it was enough to let you know when you get to wherever you're going, everything you touch may be booby-trapped. And what they booby-trapped more than anything else was bodies.
Really?
You never touch a dead body because it may be booby-trapped. And if it was, there was 2 dead bodies if you touched it. Tried to move it to see if they were still alive.
Tell us about your time over in France. That's where you all moved.
Well, we just got off the ship in France and got on trucks and started toward Germany, because this is in November 1944, and this is 6 months after D-Day. But we saw no combat at all except the Battle of the Bulge. We did all that training, and during the Tennessee maneuvers in 1944. In the winter of 1943 and 44, the division was in Tennessee in maneuvers with the 1st Army. And Eisenhower, with all of his brilliancy, took a division that had been trained for 18 months as a fighting combat division, that everybody knew what they could expect out of everybody else, and went in there and stripped that division of all the best men that they had and sent them over as replacements. And then they sent draftees into our division and with no training. And that's what we went overseas with. And that's what was on the line when 18 Panzer divisions hit us on the 16th of December.
Hey, it's Leslie. We're doing an interview. Oh, that's okay. That's okay. No. Okay, thanks. No, that's okay. Bye.
We don't do that stuff. So you said that was December 16th, 1944 was Battle of the Bulge?
Mm-hmm.
What was that? What was it like?
I really can't explain it. It was just a massacre. We lost 2 full regiments, ours and the 423rd, 422nd, and no, the 424th and the first 423rd. Ours was the 423rd, and we were the ones that hit first. They had the 422nd to the north of us, and they didn't hit that far up the first day, and they went up there later on. So 424th came out pretty good, but the 422nd and 423rd was wiped out. What didn't get killed was captured.
Was that you?
Yeah, we ran. See, they had us surrounded. We didn't know that. We didn't know anything at all. We were sitting in pillboxes that the Germans had built, and then the divisions that went in there before us took them from the Germans, and they was back, I don't know how many miles into Germany then, and we occupied those pillboxes. We had 2 regiments and a half of another one from the 45th Division, I believe it was, strung out like that 20 miles. 2 regiments and a half strung out 20 miles. That's a man about every 25, 30 feet. And we kept radioing back, trying to get food and ammunition up. And we got no answer from them. We kept telling them, they're building up, we're watching them. They're hauling ammunition in. And we got no answers. They set us up. Eisenhower planned this whole thing. and it backfired when the weather changed and it started snowing harder, and it snowed like that for almost 2 weeks. Couldn't get planes in, couldn't get anybody out, couldn't get food and ammunition in, and we ran out of food before they even hit us on the 16th. But we just had what ammunition we had that we took in with us. And that's all we had. When it was gone, we had nothing to fight with. And our regimental commander gathered all of us together and said, "Man, that's it." And we surrendered. About 2,700. And that's all was left out of our regiment. There's, I think, 1,800 in the regiment. No, 2,700. I can't remember how many it was, but now it's, this has been 70 years ago.
That's okay.
I can't remember numbers to that extent of how many. I know I know the numbers in a platoon and a company. We had 12 men to a squad, 3 squads to a platoon, 3 platoons to a company, plus a weapons platoon and a mortar platoon. They had about 12, 15 each one of them. And then there was 3 platoons to a company and 3 companies to a battalion, 3 battalions to a regiment, 3 regiments to a division. So you can figure it up.
It's a lot.
And but I just always felt like all my life that the Lord was taking care of me, and I never worried about anything. I never once ever thought about not getting home. Never. And I went so long when I was a POW that without eating, without enough food, that I dropped down to 98 pounds and couldn't even stand up. Was in a little German hospital when the 3rd Armored Division came through and liberated us.
What was the name of the camp that you were in after you surrendered?
I wasn't in the camp. They just walked us every day. They walked us 25 miles every day.
Then what would they do with you after that?
Well, if they could find a barn, they'd put us up in a barn. They split us up for one thing. I forget how many it was that was in that group I was with, but I know there was only, when I went into this little hospital, it was about 3 days before our troops broke through and counterattacked and drove the German army back into Germany. And there was only about 700 left out of the group that I was with.
Oh gosh.
I don't have any idea what happened to anybody that was in I was a squad leader. I had 12 men under me, and I don't have any idea what happened to any of them. I know our captain got out all right. I don't know about our lieutenant. I don't know about our first sergeant. I don't know about our platoon sergeant. Whatever happened to any of them, or any of the rest of the company. I've often wondered how many of them got back. There couldn't have been very many because they didn't. Well, you know, you take a line 20 miles long and a man every 25 yards and get hit with 18 Panzer Grenadiers, tanks, and infantry, and all at one time, and not even expecting it. We didn't have any idea what was going on, and they knew exactly what was going to happen. They lured Hitler into committing all of his army to that one spot with the intention of wiping them out.
And it didn't happen.
And the weather kept them from doing it. Had it not been for us,
Oh, go ahead.
had it not been for us stopping them there at St. Vith, Belgium, they would have wiped the 101st out at Bastogne. Because we stopped them long enough to get them disoriented. That was their goal, to take St. Vith the first day, and we kept them from taking St. Vith for 4 days before we got captured. And that interrupted all of their plans. And then they had enough men in reserve and brought in three more divisions and put in there and drove them back. So if it hadn't been for us stopping them at St. Vith, Bastogne would, the 101st would have been wiped out too. You don't hear anything about the 106th, but you hear a lot about the 101st Airborne because of Bastogne. And I give them boys all the credit in the world because they faced the same thing we did, just not as much. And they had no ammunition except what they carried with them, and they couldn't get any in either. They had no food except what they had before, and they couldn't get any in until the weather broke. Patton got up there with his tanks, and the weather broke, and the Air Force started bombing, and that was the end of Hitler's army. They drove them back into Germany, and in March, they surrendered.
What was your job?
My job? I had 12 men under me that I told them what to do, how to do it, where to go, and what to do. I remember my lieutenant telling me to send a man out to see what was going on, and I just flat told him, I said, I'm not sending any more men out. I've already sent 3 out and none of them have come back. I'm not sending any out at all. If you want to go out, you can. And he said, I'm not going out. And I said, well, I'm not either. So we stayed together. We was together when we got to St. Vith. But
How long were you a POW?
from the 19th of December until the 13th of March,
Even
4
though,
months. 4 months.
even though they marched you all day long, how were you treated?
Oh, we were treated good. They didn't do anything to us. They just had the old men that was their soldiers that was too old to fight, kept us in line, and if somebody dropped out the side of the road, they just shot them and left them laying there.
You weren't afraid that would happen to you, were you?
I never even gave it a thought. I said the Lord was taking care of me. The Lord has taken care of me all my life, and I've served Him all my life. But something happened to me that didn't happen to anybody else, except a couple of men that was with me. When it happened, there was a wagon going down the road that we was marching on one day, and I just got to where I was just stumbling and falling and getting up and going again, and this guard came over and got me and 2 other men and put us on that wagon and dropped us off at a hospital down the road. Little old hospital, about like one of these things out on Frederica Street. A little clinic. And we stayed there, and they fed us, got a bath. And we did go into a camp and stayed there, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. And they run us through the delousing process. Everybody had body lice all over them. And you kill those things with gas, some kind of gas, I don't know what it was. But we went through that thing and got rid of the body lice. And we had no razors or knives or anything else to shave. I never shaved for all that time. And after I got out, I haven't missed a day shaving in 70 years.
Did you look like ZZ Top when you got out?
Like who?
Like the ZZ Top, the
Oh yeah.
beards.
Yeah, I had to take scissors and cut my beard that long. You've seen these people running around today with their white beards. Mm-hmm. Well, I had a beard that long, but it wasn't white.
Oh.
And my hair was down on my back. No haircut for 4 months.
What did you think about while you were a POW?
Getting something to eat. When you're starving, the only thing you think about is, how can I get something to eat? And there was no way to get something to eat. Just what they gave us.
What would they give you?
We had most of the time we had basically the same thing. We had a slice of black German bread and a little bowl of potato. They called it potato soup. It was just water that they had boiled the potato in, took the potato out and gave us the water, and that was potato soup. Then once in a while we'd get a piece of, with the bread, we'd get a piece of what they call blood sausage. You heard of that? Mm-hmm. Just now and then we'd get that instead of soup. That was it. A day. Once a day.
So what were the attitudes of the other men who were captured? Did they try to stay positive, or what was that like?
They just did the best they could, just like I did. You just didn't make any trouble. And they didn't, the guards didn't give us any trouble. And when I was listed as missing in action for 2 months before we got to a camp where they put us for a couple of days and registered us as POWs. And when I went into the man to register for a POW, that man spoke better English than I did. And I said, "Where did you learn to speak English so good?" And he said, "Well, I was German born, but I was raised in Pennsylvania and went to college in Pennsylvania. And my family came back over here to settle the estate and get rid of it. And while I was here, they got me and put me in the Army. And that's how come, and he was still in the Army. And I guess stayed in there and was a POW. And the strange part about it was, a lot of this stuff I found out from the history book of my division that I have. I have a book that the title of it is St. Vith, Line in the Way. And it's a history book of the 106th Infantry Division from the day it was activated until the day it was deactivated. And the 106 was built back up with replacements after the Battle of the Bulge, and they basically are the ones that took Germany, the rest of it. They went on into Germany, and they kept them over there as guards for about 3.5 million German prisoners. And that's a job.
So you got registered at a camp,
Mm-hmm.
and then you went to the hospital.
Oh, yeah. We went back out. They took us out of the camp and started walking us again because they didn't have any room for us there. They just crowded us in there until they could get us registered.
And then you left not long after that. Or were you there a while at the camp?
Well, we was only there about 3 days, maybe 4,
Oh.
best of my recollection. I don't remember all the things that happened to us. I can remember people going up on the top of on the second floor of a barn when they put us in barns and for the night, and they'd go up on the barn or second floor, and they had little containers, and they'd put water in them and boil them, and we would go out and behind the barns and get the grass, the rye grass, and put it in that water and cook it and eat that grass. It's good. Cattle eat it.
Did your family know that you were missing in action or that you were a POW?
They didn't know what happened for 2 months. I was just listed as missing in action. And then they got a note, got the card from the government or from the camp after we were registered that we were POWs. That's when they found it out. 2 months after we got captured. Then, they didn't know whether it's dead, alive, what.
So what was it like when U.S. liberated you? How did you feel? Did you think, I'm finally going to eat something?
Well, we got, what irritated me was this little hospital got Red Cross boxes. And most of the people in that hospital were French. And they got the Red Cross boxes, and we got what was left over, which wasn't much. But it was enough to keep us alive. I remember, just like it was yesterday, one of the men that was in the hospital there, when they lined the guards and the hospital workers up out in front of the hospital, and one of the people in the hospital that had been there for a while walked up to one of those tankers and took his trench knife and walked over to one of those guards and went just like that and cut his throat. I don't know what he had done to him, but that's just like it happened yesterday.
So what was the process after you all were liberated? Did they take you to another hospital?
They the tanker turned us over to somebody, I don't know who, and they put us on trucks and took us to a field hospital. And they took us from the field hospital to Paris, to an army hospital. And that's where they started taking care of us, trying to feed us, and we couldn't eat. They kept food, just a big plate of food by my bed and a gallon jar of water all the time. I may be able to eat maybe 3 or 4 spoonsful, and that was all. It had been so long since I had had anything to eat that my stomach shrunk, and I couldn't hold any more than that. And it took me, I don't know, I don't remember exactly how long it was before I could eat anything at all that you could call a meal. And, to this very day, I can eat all I can hold, miserable, and get up and I'm still hungry.
So how long was it before you got to go home?
We stayed in that hospital in France for a while. I don't remember how long. And then they flew us to Cherbourg, I believe it was, France, there on the coast. And we stayed there. We stayed in the pillboxes that was left after the invasion for about, I guess maybe 3 or 4 days. and we got on the hospital ship and came home. I remember one day we were all we had to do was just lay on our bunks, and we was laying on our bunks, and there was a real loud explosion, and when that explosion went off, everybody in that was in that pillbox was under their bed. Because we didn't know what was going on. A kid got hold of a shell that was a dud, and he was playing with it, and it went off.
Did it kill the kid?
Yeah.
So when you went home, where did you land?
Boston Harbor.
Were you just ecstatic to see home?
No, I guess you'd call it excited. I wasn't necessarily excited about anything.
Right.
I was just, I guess you'd say I was glad to be alive.
So how did you get back to Kentucky?
I got to Kentucky through Mayo General Hospital in Galesburg, Illinois. I was up there from, we got back to Galesburg, I think it was April, sometime in April. Maybe it was May, I guess it was. And I stayed up there, and they treated me. I had severe headaches. Just, I don't know whether you've ever had a migraine or not. I don't know what a migraine is, but I've heard people have migraines and they just can't do anything. Mm-hmm. Well, my head hurt like that continually, clear down the middle of my back. I got blown out of a foxhole with a 155. And then I was in a building in Koblenz, Germany, and our Air Force bombed a bridge, was bombing a bridge 5 miles from where we were. We were in barracks that Germans had occupied at one time, and they put us in there. We stayed there about 2 or 3 days, I think. And this is right after the Bulge broke and the weather broke and the planes could fly. And they was bombing that bridge over the Rhine River. We had already crossed the Rhine River and was in these barracks over there. And they were fighter bombers with 500-pound bombs on their wings, and they missed their target 5 miles and bombed up those barracks that we were in. And one of the bombs landed about, I don't know, maybe 75, 80 feet outside the barracks I was in. And they were brick buildings with windows, steel enclosed windows, and it took those windows right out and the side of that building right out, and I was laying in there underneath a bunk. They had bunk beds in there for the German soldiers, 4-deckers, and I was underneath one of the beds when we heard the planes, because we didn't know whose planes they were, and it just took those windows out, and it took that bunk right out from over my head. And I got a concussion from it. And that was the second time that I got a concussion.
The first time was in the foxhole, at the Battle of the Bulge.
That was when it first started. And we were in a patch of woods by itself, and they was shelling that woods with 155s. They had those every inch of ground targeted, and they knew exactly where to fire and what was there, because they left it. It was what they left when they got run out. And the idiot that put us there should have been court-martialed.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was. Of course, it goes back to Eisenhower, because he was a supreme commander, and he gives orders for everything. But there was people under him that had to do it, and we just did what was told. But I got home, I got back to Galesburg, and they had a lieutenant there, was a doctor that did a spinal tap on me, trying to find out what was causing my headaches. And he did the spinal tap and sent me back to my bed in my ward. I got up that night, went to the mess hall, and I was standing in line in the mess hall, and I passed out.
Oh my.
And they had to take me back to my bed, and the doctor that was in charge of that ward that I was on said, "What happened to you?" And I said, "I don't know, I just passed out." He said, "What made you pass out?" And I said, "I don't know, I had a spinal tap this morning, and I guess that's what did it." He said, "You had a spinal tap this morning, and you were up out of bed?" Said, "You should have been in bed for 24 hours. And I said, "Nobody told me to stay in bed." Come to find out, this little lieutenant that gave me that spinal tap, I was the first one he ever done it to. And he never told me a thing. He said, "You're just fortunate to be alive."
Oh my. I hope he got in trouble.
He did get in trouble. He was in big trouble.
Good.
Yeah. But I never did see him anymore.
No.
But after that, I got all they wanted me to go out and exercise. And every time I moved, my head hurt. So I just laid in bed. And I told them I wasn't going to exercise because my head hurt. So they, "Well, if you can't go outside, we'll give you bed exercises." And I started the bed exercises, and every time I'd move to do the exercises they had, it would start my head hurting again. And I said, "I'm not going to do that. I can't stand it." And so they said, "Well, we'll quit that too." And finally they made me get up and dress and with my, put my uniform on and put me in a, I don't know what you call it now. There's a little place where I sharpened needles where they give you shots. Mm-hmm. When you put a needle in it, it dulls it. They didn't throw those things away. They sterilized them, and then we sharpened them. And I got a job sharpening needles for them. And my head was still hurting. And finally they gave me a furlough and I went home. I got home if I'm not, I don't know, I don't remember exactly, but I'm almost sure I got home on my birthday. I was 21 years old.
That's a great birthday present.
But you know, I was in the Army, did the training in combat, POW, back in the hospital and home before I was 21 years old and wasn't allowed to vote. You couldn't vote then until you was 21. They passed a law after that you could vote at 18. Then I had a 30-day furlough and I went back and they gave me different jobs doing this little old piddling things. Mm-hmm. And then they had a man there that was paralyzed from the waist down. He got hit in the spine with a Jap 25 in the Pacific, and he lived in Grand Forks, Minnesota. And they gave him a 30-day furlough, and they let me take him home. So I spent 30 days in Grand Forks, Minnesota with him, taking care of him. And got to know his brother. Up until last year, I was still in touch with his brother.
Wow.
He lived in California, but I guess I made him mad with a Christmas card because he would write me Christmas cards every year, tell me all about his drunken garage is what he called them, and I don't do that. And I wrote him a letter and told him what I did. Of course, I taught Sunday school in church for 50 years altogether. And I started out teaching first and second grade. And I graduated from that to fourth and fifth. And from that to adults, I taught adult men, and then I taught adult women from 70 to 100 in Sunday school for 50 years.
What was your favorite group of people?
Oh, the women. I just, it's hard teaching men Sunday school. They want to argue with you. Women don't do that. Women know more about the Bible than men do because they study it more. I didn't know that until I did all that teaching. I went back to the church that I left 15 years ago, 2 months ago, and one of the women came up to me and said, "Do you remember my mother?" And she told me what her mother's name was. Of course, I remembered her. And I said, "Yeah, I had her in my Sunday school class." And she said, "Yeah, I know. That's what I was going to tell you." She said, "My mother told me that you was the best teacher she ever had."
Oh.
I said, "Well, she must have had some very poor teachers." But well, then I went back after I got back from, or not North Dakota, but Minnesota, and they was going to send me back to duty, back to Michigan to a rehab camp. Mm-hmm. And I told them I wasn't going to no rehab camp. I wasn't able to. My head was still causing me all kinds of trouble. And they said, "Well, we got your orders cut to go to this place in Michigan." I said, "Well, if I go to Michigan, you'll have to come to Kentucky and get me and take me up there because I'm going home. I'm not going to no rehab anywhere unless you send me to Camp Atterbury in Indiana where I can go home every once in a while. And they changed my orders and discharged me.
Wow.
So I got home and was discharged the 30th of November in 1945.
When did you hear about the atomic bomb? Do you remember that?
No, I really don't.
Okay.
I can't tell you when or where I was.
Okay.
All I know is I heard about it just like everybody else did.
When you got home, what was your parents' reaction?
When I got home, they was glad to see me. Of course, I had a job
Yeah.
that I went back to.
Doing the paper.
No, I was working for Westinghouse.
Oh yeah, that's.
I was working for Kenrad when I went in the Army, but Kenrad sold the tube department to General Electric and lamp department to Westinghouse. And I was working for the lamp department, so I went back and was working for Westinghouse.
How long did you stay with them?
About 22 months, and I was working the night shift, and I couldn't sleep in daytime. A job came open, and same thing I was doing at night, and they wouldn't give it to me. They said they couldn't train anybody, and I said, well, if I can't get it, I can't get the next one either, so I might as well quit and do something else because I can't go nights any longer. So I quit. And I got my diploma from school, from machine shop. And they had a job open at Westinghouse in the machine shop. And I went up there and applied for it. And when I went in and talked to the man that, well, I can't think what they call him now. Well, anyway, the guy that I talked to about the job opened my records up and stamped across my record was, "Do not rehire." And he said, "I'm sorry, I can't hire you." And I said, "Why?" And they said, he showed me that, said, "Do not rehire." He said, "You can't work for Westinghouse anywhere they have a plant." And I said, "Why? What they got that on there for?" He said, "I have no idea, but that's what it says, and I can't hire you, and nobody else can either in Westinghouse." So I said, "Well, that's fine with me." So I was working for Charlie Faith and Faith Tool and Die. And his dad retired from General Electric, and they had 8 openings down there in the machine shop. And he talked to the foreman, told me to go down and talk to him. I went down and talked to the foreman. He said, "Come in to work next Monday." I went to work in the machine shop on the 10th of January, 1950, and worked until first of January, 1985. And retired.
Did they ever figure out what was causing your headaches?
No, but I did. I had those headaches all the time. I never did get rid of them. I took codeine. Codeine was the only thing that would help me. And I came home from work one night and I took 2 codeine tablets and laid down across the bed, 4 o'clock. I woke up 6 o'clock the next morning, still laying there across the bed. And I went to the doctor the next day and he said, don't you ever, ever, ever take another codeine tablet or let anybody give you a codeine tablet. He said, if you do, it might kill you. He said, you're allergic to them now, you've had too many of them. I said, what am I going to take? And he said, I don't know of anything you can take. And he said, just have to tough it out. So that's all I did for years and years. And finally I had that pain going from my neck, down my arm, to my wrist. And I had 30 chiropractic treatments. And every time I had a treatment, it got worse. So I told the chiropractor, I said, won't be back. You're making me worse. And he had always been able to fix what I had wrong with me. I went a couple of times a year just routinely. And I went to a neurosurgeon. He did a bone scan on me. And he said, you've got bone spurs in the 3rd and 4th vertebra in your neck, and they're pinching off the nerves. That's what's causing your arm to hurt. And I said, does that mean I'm going to have surgery? And he said, no, I'm going to give you something to do that'll take care of it. So he gave me a contraption to put under my neck, under my chin, and hang a rope on it and a door, sit in a chair and pull that thing down like that and stretch my neck. And after a month, my pain in my arm was gone. My headaches were gone too. And I haven't had a headache since. And that was 1987, I guess.
You lived with those for a long time.
Mm-hmm. But you know, the VA still won't recognize the fact that I had 2 concussions because neither one of them knocked me out. They said anytime you have a concussion, it'll knock you out. How many football players have you seen that's had concussions and got up and walked off the field?
Right.
Concussions don't always knock you out.
No, they don't.
But the VA doesn't recognize that. I draw 80% disability. I should be drawing 100. But I draw 80. So anything the VA's got, I can get for nothing.
Nice.
Plus my compensation.
Well, I have any more questions?
Did you receive any letters while you were in the war?
Any what?
Letters?
No. While I was in the Army?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I got letters from my mother 3 or 4 times a week.
Did you have a sweetheart back home?
No.
Were you able to write any letters back to your mother?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Whenever I got time, I would write a letter and start it one day, and maybe 3 days later I'd get to finish it. But yeah, we all of us wrote letters. We got food boxes. My mother sent me cakes and cookies, stuff like that, and everybody else's did too. When anybody got a box from home, everybody shared it. But you know, the Army's just like a big family. What you do to me, you do to everybody else.
Right.
And had I not got hurt, I would have stayed in the Army.
What would you like future generations to know about the war?
About the war, the only thing I can say about war is nobody wins. Nobody wins a war. Everybody loses. There is no winner in war. And anybody that says there is a winner in war, I would like for them to tell me what it is. What do you gain by taking the young men and women now out and using them for gun fodder? Just kill them off, just like it's killing animals to eat them. That's what it amounts to. With nothing to gain in the end. We gained our freedom in World War II. We gained nothing in the Vietnam War. We gained nothing in the Korean War. And we absolutely gained nothing in the Iraq, Afghanistan wars. Totally useless. I think they ought to take the people that started the wars over there and put them on the front line. Then there would be no more wars. They go over there and see those troops, talk to them, tell them what a good job they're doing. Come back home and go in the big offices and get their drinks and have parties and do nothing. The people that started the Iraq and Afghanistan wars are most of them still up there today, and they're doing absolutely nothing except doing nothing. We're not getting anything from our Congress and Senate or the President today. The President inherited a debt from the former President, and now he's getting blamed for all the debt the country has, when most of it was there when he took office. And the debt that he's got He's been trying to help people help themselves that couldn't help themselves before. The only people that are gaining anything out of the wars are the people that has millions and billions of dollars and care nothing about anybody else. You know, there's a sign on the wall at the VA clinic out here on the Hartford Road. It says the words homeless and veterans should never be spoken in the same sentence. And a third of the homeless people in the United States today are veterans. And that's a crime. That is a crime. There should be no homeless veterans. There should be no homeless people. This country is rich, and nobody should be homeless. Nobody should be hungry. And Congress and Senate are now trying to cut benefits from people that have no other way to live except what they can get from the government because they're not able to take care of themselves financially or physically. And they're being accused of taking things from the government instead of working for it. They would work if they had jobs. Now there's some of them won't, because there's some people are raised to live off the government, generation after generation. It's been that way all the time. It's not anything new. But, you know, my wife accuses me of being a pessimist. I tell her I am not a pessimist. I'm a realist. I face facts. You know, I can look at that door and see that it's got a glass in it. And I can sit here and say, I wish that door had a glass in it so I could see out. That's a pessimist. I'm a realist. I see things as they are. Maybe the way I see them as they are is not the way somebody else would see them. But they're still that way. No matter how you look at it, that's got leaves on it, and everybody that looks out that window and sees that tree, if they can see it all, can see that tree's got leaves on it. I'm a realist. I didn't say, well, you know, that tree won't have leaves on it in the wintertime. That's a pessimist.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about the war? Or?
Not unless you all got questions.
I think we asked them all.
How long have you been married?
We were married 50 years, the 28th of February.
Wow.
We lived in the same house.
Oh, wow.
We had a house built, and we moved into it right after we was married.
That's great.
Got 4 grandchildren and 7 great-grandchildren.
It's a lot of birthdays.
Love every one of them.